one. Take care of your digital assets today at rockwallet.com, including Bitcoin SV, the original protocol, and genuine Bitcoin. Right, today we've got the amazing Callie Spell. So this is going to be a part of a new series of Satoshi's Talks. So I've done an interview with Callie on her podcast recently, and I thought, you know what, actually, I would actually really like to interview her on my channel. So here we are today. So welcome, Callie. How are you?
I'm very well, Toshi. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. As you say, we've met quite a few times in person, and online. So yeah, it's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was a really strange story as to how we first met, because I'd seen your podcast and I thought, wow, she's really well spoken, really well educated, and the interviewees that you'd had on your show, I was just like, wow, she's also really well connected. How on earth am I going to get in contact with her? And then, would you believe it? Literally a week later, we actually met individually, live at one of the meetings. I was like, oh, I don't believe it. I think that might be Callie over there. Went up straight away and introduced myself, obviously because I go under a pseudonym. Nobody really knows what I look like in the flesh. But as soon as I introduced myself and started talking, you were like, oh, right, yes, I know that topic. But I was really fascinated about your background, which is why I wanted to talk to you, because one of the reasons I'm in this space is obviously because of this global conspiracy that we're involved in, that JFK tried to warn us about and everything like that. So I just wondered, can you introduce to the audience and also tell me a little bit about your story and how you got involved in this?
Yeah, I suppose so. Unless it starts becoming a therapy session for people, not for me. It's because we've all been under the cosh, haven't we, to
Yeah.
a high degree. I I suppose I like to say that I've been, or maybe I don't like to say awake, because awake is a party for the dead. So aware, shall we say? I
Yeah.
started becoming aware of the system, I suppose, at a real young age. My sister died without getting the violins out, so that was a trauma. And I
Mm.
think trauma opens your third eye. She died of cancer, of leukemia, when she would have just turned 14, and I
Oh,
was
no.
just about to turn 12. So a bit of early trauma. I think obviously that splintered my whole family, and I always laugh saying I grew up on the mean streets of Bolton. I had to grow up quickly, shall we say,
Mm.
which makes it sound very dramatic. But I suppose I kind of suppressed a lot of that stuff. But I suppose I learned about Big Pharma very quickly,
Oh.
having witnessed it firsthand, and that was, I'd say, the biggest catalyst for waking me up. And obviously, having to go to school, and I mean, I never liked even going to school as a young kid. I kind of screamed going in there for a couple of weeks, and my mum says, "Oh, you always liked school," and I went, "No, I think it's quite a traumatic place for children. Really, I'm a bit with David Edelman on that one. School is no place for children. Never mind the brainwashing and the programming." But I was always quite popular and sporty and the rest of it. So I did well. It's not like I had a hard time at school at all in that sense. I
Mm.
really, really didn't. So that was the start of it for me. And as soon as, because, I'm showing my age here now, but we had dial-up internet.
Yeah, I remember that.
Well, no, we didn't even have the internet, did we? We
Yeah,
didn't have
yeah.
the internet at all. So it was a completely different generation, or generation, X. So I got up, I went to school, I came home to an empty house. My dad had to work, and, that splintering of the family and that trauma of my sister, kind of that with that, really. There was a lot of emotional unavailability, shall we say. I told you this would sound like a WhatsApp therapy session, but this is the truth of it, and I'm very open about it. So yeah, I kind of, as soon as we got dial-up internet, when I thought, what is this
Mm.
magic? And I just started researching, and that's what I am, really. More than anything, I'm a good networker, and I'm a good researcher, and I pull the proverbial threads of things, and I got nicknamed the algorithm angel, and I think that suits me quite well, because I wouldn't say I massively deep dive one topic, but I've dived a lot of topics, and I hopefully pull, like I say, a bit of a proverbial thread. And and I share my journey, that's it. And if
Mm.
people resonate with that, as well as doing the law and the legal stuff, especially with the spiritual stuff and the occult stuff. I'm just truly interested in life and death, and you know, the nature of all existence. And I think that's what we're seeing now, isn't it? I mean, it's biblical out there. It's the apocalypse, and apocalypse, as we know, means unveiling.
Oh.
The reveal, the great, you know, we're in Revelation, we're in the reveal, which is why they want the great reset. So that kind of kick-started my, yeah, everything really. And it grew from in my 20s, I got into David Icke and David Icke books, and whatever you think about David Icke, he's been a massive catalyst for waking a lot of people up, whether you agree with everything he says or not. And he's kind of been proven to be, in the main, quite correct, hasn't he? From being
Yeah.
ridiculed, lambasted, and the rest of it. So I've always got like a healthy respect for him. And people say, "Oh, he's a shill, he's a Freemason," and I'm just like, well, look, it's duality, reality. We're all actors. You know, Shakespeare said the world is a stage. We all come and play our part. And I believe the reality is scripted to a degree, but with paradoxical free will choices thread within it. And that's kind of where I'm up to, really. And the more aware I got over the years, and I had lulls in it, and I got stuck, and life happens to you, and nobody wanted to hear it. Toshi, in the end, no, shut up, Jill, get your tinfoil hat off, you know, all that. So I did, in a way, I kind of did shut up. And then and then 4 years ago happened, and then it's like, you know, I've not shut up since again. Because I
Yeah.
suppose all that, yeah, that was that my grounding and my basis to be able to kind of go on talking about what I talk about. But like I say, I never say that I'm right. I just postulate, pull a proverbial thread, and people resonate with it or they don't.
So, what was it that first raised your suspicions with regard to your sister's passing, or about the pharmaceutical industry?
It was mainly, I suppose, being about, I would have been 10 really when it was all happening. So going into the hospital and seeing these doctors and nurses, these you know, in these positions of authority. I got kicked out of the brownies, Toshi, for asking one too many questions. That's not a joke. That's a true story. So,
Jesus.
you know, they're all lining up in their uniforms going, "I promise to do, you know, to serve the Queen and do my duty to God." And I'm thinking, what God? Who's that? What's going on here? And looking back at the line and going, I remember doing that and thinking, what are they all doing? And it, you know, as a young girl, I wanted to join the brownies because my sister was in the brownies. I did 2 weeks and saw through it really, and they were like, you need to, you know, first aid on this dummy. Everyone's going and gobbing on it, and I had to, you know, it was my turn, and I went no, and they were like, "You'll get a badge." I went, "I don't care what I'll get."
Wow. And how old were you at this point? What, 14 or
I would
younger?
no, I was about 7 or 8
Oh my
then.
goodness me! So you must have been very conscious of yourself. I mean, like usually at
Yeah,
7 or 8, kids are a little bit mischievous, but generally they just do what they're told because they've got nothing better to do. Whereas, like
yeah, yeah.
you're already questioning at that young age. You must have kind of like felt a little bit different, I guess.
Yeah, I think I see that more now looking back, and that's the hindsight, isn't it? I think I probably wasn't a slightly unusual child, very creative, probably kind of quite aspergic, really, as they say, really, and I see that in me as I look back at me being I can't say kid. It's easy, but you know,
Mm.
kids belong to goats, and
Yeah, yeah.
we're getting into Satan, but we'll get there later, no doubt. But yeah, I suppose just for ease, as a kid, I was, yeah, quite inquisitive. It was always, why though? Why though? Yeah, but why though? You know, and all kids are like that, aren't they? But again, that's why that system is designed to quash that out of us, isn't it? You know, sit down,
Yeah,
shut
yeah,
up.
yeah. It gets
Positions
suppressed.
of authority, do as you're told, you know. But I kind of never did. I weren't naughty, but I just didn't quite. It weren't washing with me to a degree, but you know, it did, obviously, because I did go to school, and I suppose I did do what I was told to that degree. But yeah, certainly that was the beginning of you know, questioning things, and that authority. You know, seeing people bringing my sister Lucozade and grapes and Ribena, and you know, that's sugar,
Mm.
and sugar feeds cancer, basically doing everything that was incorrect to help cancer. And there was a big documentary, wasn't there, called the, oh God, what was it called? It was on cancer, and it was I can't remember the name of it, but it was like a big part, I think it was like 10-part documentary by a guy. And I watched that, like when we finally got, you know, dial up internet and things like that, whenever that came out later on. I might be getting my dates mixed up, but yeah, so I quickly had a very yeah, I just questioned authority from a very early age because I could see that it was a lie, that there were lies in it.
Wow.
And I got some, I went to college, and I got some good. I did have some good tutors who believed in me, and those kind of like sat on the edge of the desk and let you call them George and took you watching
Mm.
Ken Loach films and said, you think you've got choice, you've not. And my media teacher at Bolton College really opened my mind up to the way things worked, and it just kind of just grew and grew and grew from there. So I knew that everything was a bit of a lie. I didn't quite know how, but I kind of knew quite early on, and I just didn't stop because I
Wow.
think as well from the trauma. Look at
Mm.
me, I told you this every therapy session
This is
talking about.
great. This is great.
but from that trauma and that suppression of all that was kind of happening to me as a kid, I I developed logic. My logic kind of developed pretty quickly. My emotional side didn't, because I defended that and hid it away a bit. So this is a lot of inner work that I've done as I've got older, that has made me more aware of who I am and why I am and why I have been the way that I've been, so.
Well,
And that's that.
I guess the hardest part when you're a kid is defining the situation that you're in and what has actually happened to you, and also what you're experiencing. That's the main thing, because it's like I found. I mean, I was like inquisitive, not as inquisitive as you, but the issue I had was that I couldn't define what was going on. It's just like, okay, this feels a little bit icky, but what is it? I didn't have that sort of clarity of mind that you had, where you're just like, hold on a minute, there is something seriously wrong here.
Yeah.
It was really only well, I guess. Yeah, I guess my story is, I mean, how I got into Bitcoin and how this all pieces together was just being interested in the money program and seeing because my father was a small business owner, and then he was watching the money program, and as a kid you're just like, oh yeah, what's that my parents are watching? Yeah, what's this? I don't really get it. And because I didn't really get it, that kind of triggered my curiosity, which was just like,
Yeah.
what is this thing? There's lots of people talking about it, but what is it? What do they actually mean? What's what's going on, basically? And then that led me on to the more extreme examples of financial crime, and following the money trail, and that obviously led you on to the pumping and dumping of economies, and realizing that the news likes to report that everybody loses in a massive recession, but it's not. There is always somebody who wins big. And I
Yeah.
don't just mean rather big. I mean extraordinarily big. And it's kind of like,
Yeah.
oh, and where that economic incentive lies to win big, shit will always happen. But that didn't really occur to me until much later, probably after I'd like finished university. So I was really interested when I spoke to you, when you were saying, oh, well, just kind of the angle that you were coming at it from, with obviously the spelling and the language that we were learning. So can you give us a bit more on that rabbit hole that you went down?
Yeah, so I suppose kind of jumping forward from my, through time, we're all
Hmm.
time travelers, through that kind of point in my past. And the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
And have you seen that video where the German government have now said, oh, yeah, there wasn't one?
Really? Is that what they've said now?
They've just released it. Yeah, I was watching it yesterday. I've not finished watching it yet, but they took them, to like, a court case, and yeah, they've freedom of information requests. Yeah, there was never a pandemic. The
Oh
death rate was
my
never
god.
high. So they've,
I didn't
it's
know that. You have to send me the link. That's massive.
yeah, yeah, and I mean they let these things out every now and again, don't they? But it just kind of seems to go past the straights heads, But I also get why that is as well, because they've not asked the questions, so they don't understand the answer. There's a lot kind of going on with that kind of brainwashing and programming, and just been feared into, programmed into a corner. Of course, we get it. But yeah, that came out the other day. I just put it up in Dark Matters actually, but I'll send you the link to it. No problem.
Great. Yeah,
So
I'll put it in the link in the description on this video as well for everyone else to have a look at.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'll send it over to you. And I think it's just this, isn't it? It's just I could see through, like, let's take the word pandemic. Yeah. So just even just the breaking down of one word. we weren't in one. You know, it was as simple as that. And that's just using the Oxford, English dictionary. It wasn't like I was, deep diving etymological roots of the word or anything. We, by the definition of a pandemic, and I put that out at the time, which, emotions were very high, weren't they?
Yeah.
And I got lynched. I said, we're not in one, according to the Office for National Statistics. So I pull up the Office for National Statistics. The death rate's it's lower than a 5-year average. So what's going on, for a virus that has a 98.9 survival rate, even if there was one all, which I believe that they perhaps did release something, because early on I did videos on viral theory. That's how I started, because I just want to understand, like you were saying, Toshi, that you didn't understand, and it was that I didn't get it. None of it, it just didn't make sense. And the one thing that I did know from, studying law at university and the little tricks and cons, but we don't get taught that, of course, at university. They want unis one versus song. They want to sing you one song. They want a minion to understand it and go out there and support that bar society, that system, because that's the first thing you do. You swear your oath of allegiance to the bar. But I kind of knew that must meant may. So you must close your business. You must wear a mask. Must it means may. So it's an offer of contract. And I knew that they were lying, obviously, because I've been awake by this point, or worse, shall we say. I don't like awake, but trying to get myself to stop saying that. But of kind of what the system was about, I knew. So this was like, this is it, they're going for it. Because obviously I was reading David Icke books and talking about them doing something like this in my 20s, yeah.
Wow.
So as soon as it came on the TV, I the black box of Saturn in the corner, I was like, oh, this is it, they're doing it. And I remember my mum saying to me at the time, she went, what do you mean? I went, this is it, they're going for it, this is it. Yeah, and I knew, and I just knew in my soul. And I went to town, I went back to my books. I did viral theory in about 2 or 3 weeks, as Eunice Wunderplanets, Dr. Robert Young, and I was putting it out there, and again I got lynched. You're disgusting, people are dying, how dare you, you're in this, and I mean, literally, like, that's how venomous it was. But I just didn't stop. I did some videos on viral theory early on, that you can't catch a virus, and the only way you're going to catch a virus is if they inject it into you. I don't know whether you can get this on YouTube.
Well, let's try it.
I just interviewed John O'Looney last night, and that is, wow. We're putting it uncensored in Dark Matters, but I'll do a promo video and link it to Rumble at some point for other people, for the wider public later on. Because I am a bit no holds barred now. I have in the past kind of, I suppose, softened what I say, not said some things, and now I think that it's just not time. It's like, if we're not calling this shit out now for exactly what it is, then you're on the wrong side of history, in my opinion. But so yeah, I just spoke out from the beginning, and people messaged me early on, and I think it's a beautiful thing. And I'm not polishing my halo, but they were going to get the jab, but then they watched my videos and didn't get it, and then they told their friends. So that, literally speaking out, that's how important it is, as me and and we do. It saves lives. Like John O'Looney says, he says he'll go on a podcast if it's got 12 subscribers. He's been on with, Robert Kennedy Jr. to the tune of 1 million.
Wow.
He'll talk to anybody who'll listen, because he's saved, he's not bigging himself up, I'm saving lives, man. But, he does, doesn't it? Just creating that awareness. And that's been my passion ever since, really. Just, they won't shut me up. I'm just a gobby bird from Bolton, Toshi.
And we love it. We love it. So what was, I guess with me, I suppose, being a typical male, I am, sort of very much, I'm not really one to go shouting about it. It's kind of like, if I haven't got a solution to anything, I'm not gonna say anything. Because it's kind of like, I had there were a lot of people saying, oh, this is the problem. Are you ready to stand up? And I was just like, okay, well, I'm standing up. What do you want me to do? Sit back down again in my chair? Like, are you ready to stand up? Like, what do you want me to do?
It's not musical chairs.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, did you? Obviously, there's stages that you got to go through. You need to warn people. People need to be
Yeah.
educated on the problem in order to come up with a solution. But could you see a solution? Because if I didn't have the knowledge that I had on economics, I would be unbelievably stressed right now because I would not be able to see a way out. I wouldn't be able to see the wood from the trees, and I'd be like, I'd probably be in a really dark, depressive hole actually.
Yeah, well, and I think that's a huge part of that empowerment. Knowledge is power. It's one of the oldest adages, isn't it? And that's certainly what I'm about as well. And I think, like you say, there's a one of my favorite bands, or was, as is, but was Depeche Mode, and I always get like earworms in my head. And there was always one that said, "Don't just stand there and shout it. Do something about it."
Oh, excellent! Great words, great
And
lyrics.
yeah, and I think that's exactly, and men are solutions focused, and they're very logical based. So I totally get that as well. And I think women are more web thinking, and we can kind of network, and actually we've seen, haven't we, in the movement, for want of
Mm.
a better word, it was the women that were leading it really.
Yeah,
And I
true.
think it's that rise of the feminine again, without going too woo woo, but the men are the protectors. And a friend of mine, Kane, said something, and he's very much into this kind of bringing back the masculine and the feminine. But the feminine is the water, and it's water is a very powerful force, and we carve the way, but that the men are the banks. Like it's like a game of chess, isn't it? The queen's the most powerful piece on the board, but she protects
Mm.
the king. She's there to protect the king. So I kind of look at it like that. I think we've all got our roles to play, and I just play mine. And I suppose I like to. That's what Dark Matters is about as well. It's about having remedies and solutions, and that's why how we've connected as well over
Mm.
BSV, and the beauty of the potentials of BSV and what that can do to remove ourselves from the system.
Yeah,
So as
yeah.
much as for us to just keep shining a light and creating awareness of what the system is, but be also, like you say, to be able to remove ourselves from it and empower ourselves away from it, because it only has power when we join in with it. But
Yeah.
when that's all we've ever been taught and shown, well, it's time for us to carve a new way, and it's time for us to look away from it. It's like, what's that? I can never remember it. Where attention goes, energy flows.
Oh,
Woohoo! I think I
great.
finally
Yeah.
said it right. So I'm very much so about that. Like in Dark Matters, it's solution focused. So we've got the beginner's law course, we've got trust law courses, we've got debt courses. It's that teach a man how to fish.
Mm.
He'll fish for life rather than just giving him one to feed himself for a day. And it is that empowerment and creating the new systems, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So, what do you think? I presume you sort of was there a particular interest that you had, or was that interest generated by sort of like solution motivation?
Yeah, I think I was just like a woman possessed, really, because I was just so incensed by what was happening with I can't stand lies and deceit and
Mm.
trickery, and I think that's perhaps maybe my little spurgic. I don't know. There's an ability, and I think that's just because I don't vibrate, on this kind of frequency. So there's a apparently I'm from somewhere else, but let's not go there. But yeah, and I could just see it. I can cut through the bull. I knew it were all just a lie. So, like I say, I just went back to my books, because obviously I've got the law degree. I never went on to be a practicing solicitor. I actually went and studied journalism postgraduate. I wanted to, I had my place at the Manchester Evening News. I was all set up. That's what I was,
Wow,
I wrote for the uni paper for years, music reviews,
brilliant.
and did student radio and things like that. But I kind of sacked it off after first year, but I continued with the writing. So, but I saw through that. I saw through journalism. I just saw through things very quickly and at a very quick pace. And I suppose when the pandemic hit, I just wanted to know. I didn't quite understand the difference between common law and commercial law. I
Mm.
couldn't quite figure out how do when you see these shows where they beat the bailiffs and they get
Yeah,
rid of
yeah.
them, and I was like, how did they do that? Like, so I just researched for like 15, 16 hours a day till I worked it out. And I mean, religiously. I studied the Baron David Ward stuff and learned about commercialized liens. I learned about the difference between the common law and equity and jurisdiction and all these things. And I just I had to know. It was this feeling of just having to know it, and that's what I'm like. I'm a lot more relaxed these days because what I'm trying to do is, work a bit smarter, not harder. She says at the moment I'm doing that many things, getting the network up and going. It's a lot of energy, but it will be worth it in the end, because I want people to have a place where they can come, where that's what trust law is. So like everything's a trust in the system, or a promise to pay. Yeah. So if you trust me and I trust the space holders I bring in, then we can create a really cool network, of which you're in there as well, Toshi. So I trust you, do you trust me? And that's what's been certainly lacking in the movement recently. People screwing each other over, stabbing each other in the back. So I'm like, right, stay away from all that, and like I said, try and provide solution based, positive action. As well as we've got the forum in there as well, so all our members can communicate with each other and cross collaborate. I mean, it's really cool. And as the censorship's coming in more and more and more and more, especially with this new law in Scotland, these hate speech, it's basically just more bullshit to shut us up. But I really will not. It's like what me and John O'Looney and John Cooper last night said, are you willing to kind of lose everything? And I think that is the game. It's about saying no to it. But also we can, like you say, we don't have to go all living in caves, do it? If we empower ourselves in the appropriate manners about food. There's a huge network now, isn't there, of farmers selling directly to, us. Bypassing the supermarkets. That's what we've got to do. We've just got to keep being that light on the ground and coming up with new, as they come up with something. We're very inventive. We're all coming up with different solutions, and it is growing across the country.
Yeah.
Well, that's
And with all your knowledge and education that you've given yourself, was there one particular kind of like light bulb moment where you were just like, that's what they've done? Yeah, was there something that you were digging for? Because there was with me. Obviously it was the Nixon. Again, I mean, this is absolutely nuts when you know the history. You had the WEF was actually formed on the 24th of January 1971. Document FCO 30/1048 was also drafted in 1971, and that outlined how sovereignty would be surrendered, treason would be committed, the monarch deposed. So they corrupted the legal system. So that was in 1971. And then also you got the Nixon shock on the 15th of August 1971 that corrupted the financial system. So everything happened in 1971. And it was that kind of moment where I was just like, right, so now they've corrupted the legal system, they've corrupted the money, so we're literally, the whole world operates on, the whole global financial economy runs on securities fraud, and then you've got the World Economic Forum pushing out their what's the word, communist agenda. So you've got they've got a media side, you've got the legal side, and then you've got the monetary or the financial side, and it's just like, wow, they are literally coming at this at all angles. So once you've got that, you're just like, that's where they've got it, that's where the corruption lies. Now we need to expose it and play them at their own game, which is like an administration process, before they get to that stage where they can just simply roll in a tank.
Exactly. And I think, was it Albert Pike, the Freemason in 1871, then
That's
100
right.
years previous, set out the agenda for the three world wars that would collapse Western society, civilization, whatever you want to call it, and basically implement the system of light, or Lu, which is Lucifer. Which is Luciferic System, again, so that they can do it. I mean, it's always been hidden in plain sight, but where they can literally just do it in plain sight. And that's what we're seeing now, isn't it? With this gender bending, this kind of confusion, this transhumanism, this virtual reality, like a dream within a dream, isn't it? And certainly for me, I think what was the crux of it, especially in the last 4 years, was, as I studied the law, and as I always say, the journey of the law is the journey of the spirit, and the journey of the spirit is the journey of the law. Because when you decode the serpent language, that's what it is. It's a demotic language. Deglosser is where you're using two or more styles of grammar on one page, and it's a forked tongue. So it says in scripture, learn the forked tongue of the serpent and use it against them. And the Vatican is, Vatican, Vati means dog, and Vati means papa, sorry, Cain means dog. Is from Canaanite, the Canaanites, or that's where you get canon law from. And this is where you get the city of Lundan, or Landan, or was the tribe of Dan, which was the 13th order of the dragon, or the Draco, which is why London's surrounded by 13 dragons. So I suppose what I'm trying to show there is it all goes back to antiquity. So as soon as I was always into my ancient history, but I'm no historian either. Like I always like to say that. Don't think I'm a historian or I'm an etymologist. I'm not. Like I said, I pull threads, and it all makes sense to me the way I pull it. If it then makes sense to other people and I can shine light on that, then hey ho, brilliant. But Landan, is the tribe of Dan, and the king of the tribe of Dan, because my good friend Neil taught me this. He's going to be opening the new series, the second series of Dark Matters, because he knows way more about this than I do. Was the king of the tribe of Dan was King Lu, which is Lucifer, which is who is basically running the city of London still today, and Washington DC and Russia. So all this idea that Ukraine's in some kind of war with Russia, aren't we all at war with Russia? It's just absolute nonsense, because Ukraine was old Khazaria, and old Khazaria was Canaan. So again, when you study the law and you study its forked tongue, its legalese, its language, its deceptions, it tells you about our history. It opens the whole thing up. And if you're not talking about the deception of language and the legal fiction and the true nature of this land, which is England, and Ireland allegedly was Atlantis, Ire, or the Aryans, the Ireland. Great Britain means people of the Great Covenant. So they're lying to us that Christianity, or the Christ consciousness came from the east when it actually came from the west, and that's Babylon. That's the Vatican. That's the dog star of Sirius, which is in the constellation of Canis. There's that dog again, Canis Major, which is in the lined up with the belt of Orion, and allegedly the Orion group created the Anunnaki, the Draco, the fallen ones, the Nephilim, and again the tribe of Lundan, or the tribe of Dan, were the Merovingian kings and queens, the sons and daughters of the Nephilim, of the fallen angels, of the fallen ones, who still control London today. So this cosmic dance between good and evil has been going on for thousands. It's been going on since antiquity. Hence why they want a reset. It's not just a financial reset. It's to reset time. It's to reset history. It's to reset our consciousness. And I believe that they're all signaling to each other because they know a deluge is coming. That's the XD code that I'm doing at the moment. They'll just take as many people with us as they can in a cult. They'll go underground and they transport their consciousness through time into different avatars, and they worship time. So that might have gone a little bit off the boil for some people, but trust me, from my studies, that's where it all leads to, and it's beyond a lot of people's comprehension. But that was the tip. That these have been the tippers for me. It's like, wow, for those that have eyes to see. Once you see it, you can see it.
Well, I mean, we've already seen, all the elites building, underground, self-sustaining bunkers for themselves. Unbelievably plush. I mean, they've spent billions on them, because they're all billionaires themselves, So for most people, it would be like, what is going on? I mean, do you have a? I mean, it's obviously coming, and it's close. I mean, you can tell by how fast they're moving to bring this agenda in, which is why so many people are waking up. Do you think they're rushing things on purpose? Do you get this sense that they're moving faster than they initially wanted to?
Yeah, and again, this may go a little bit woo-woo for people, but trust me, and like I say, I must give a nod to Neil, who runs Ireland Aryan Group, because he's taught me so much about this, and I've just pieced the rest together with the underground bases and varying things and all the stuff I know about the law, and it fits in so well. It's unbelievable, because we know that they work in symbols. Same with the language. I'll say it 100 times, as Manly P. Hall said, when man learns the language of symbolism, then a great veil will fall from his mind. And the veil is evil. That's what came down to separate our consciousness as God consciousness, and we've just kind of forgotten who we are. So they are certainly preparing for some kind of cyclical deluge, shall we say, that comes along. I think, according to Neil, if I'm getting this right, every 24,000 years, because actually Babylon is worshipping Sirius, which is Satan, and obviously we've got our sun, which is represented by Saint Michael, and as the sun and Sirius come together like this every 24,000 years, it creates a heating up of the planet. So allegedly that's the kind of true climate change, if you like, which is why they all go underground. There's some kind of cataclysm that comes from that, and the whole thing gets reset. They come back up because they've got the technology, because they've had it, occult technology from antiquity, and the whole thing resets and begins again, which is why they're all coding to each other with the X. Say 10 is the X, Twitter X, ITV X, Madonna with the X patch, Xbox, man in the Xbox, or the man in the Xbox, or the Xbox is the Vitruvian man in the box, trapped in matter and recycled through time. So I mean, this is the stuff that's kind of going in my book. If I get the chance to, I have started writing it. The research I've got, you'd think I were a mad woman if you could scan around this room with the paper everywhere. But this is how I can just simply piece it together. And yeah, they're certainly signaling to each other at the moment. And what we're doing is we're missing that fact. So they're busy getting us all scrapping with each other. We're kept in these lower vibrations all the time, in the lower kind of frequencies. So that we can't get past and ascend. Because if we start remembering who we are and ascending, their game's up. That's game over. So this is the time for ascension. This is the window of it. And so they're creating as much division, as much war, as much negativity, as much death, as much suffering, because that's what they worship. That perverse element of Saturnian worship, death, suffering, rebirth, and so on and so forth. That's what coronavirus is. Corona means crown, virus is poison. It's crown poison. It was to shut us off from source, to make us go into a deeper level of forgetting who we are. Now, people might think I've gone a bit mad, and that's fine. But this is all written in their codes. It's all written in their text, and it's all in their symbols. And once you learn that language, they're telling you all the time.
Wow. So, what's your opinion on the expression of what goes around comes around?
Yeah, like a karmic thing.
Well, yeah.
I think there is a karma, but I think we don't understand it in the way that it actually really works. I think that's why they tell us, which is why you've got that pyramid structure of power. We know that government means mind control. We know the corporate puppets. We didn't vote these people in. These are employees of the City of London, of the corporate entity, as is, the United Kingdom Limited, or PLC, or whatever it is. The Crown Corporation. Crown is Kronos, yeah. So it all goes back round again. So again, basically their end game is that, but once we can kind of decode them like that, then it's quite simple. But they're telling, because they're telling us all the time, they're kind of protecting their own karma, really. Because if they're telling us, just because we can't understand Latin, just because we don't understand their symbols, just because we can't read all the subliminal messaging in the movies and the posters and the products and all the rest of it, just because we read scripture literally instead of anatomically and astrotheologically, and well, that's your fault. Even though we know it's a huge deception because we're not taught this. Ignorance is no defense. It's no defense of the law, and it's no defense of the creator's law. So it's kind of like, well, and the God of this place, that's why I always use creator, because the infinite creator is love. The God of this place is Sirius, it's Saturn, Satan, Set. It's the God of the underworld, and we're all laboring in Hades, and we've just not realized. But they protect their karma because they're telling us all the time. And of course, like any kind of criminal mafia, I shouldn't do that, should I? They'll be saying but any criminal mafia gets its henchmen to do things, don't they? So it's the same with these families. They don't go out really. I mean, obviously they do the child sacrifice and all the kind of stuff. They do all that, but that's so they can sustain themselves, because they're cut off from source. Whereas they want us to be also, is my theory. So they don't kind of get calmer in the sense of the way that we kind of perceive it, in the new age sense. New age is the new cage, as Tony Sayers would say.
Yeah.
But actually, the Merovingian kings called themselves the new mage. So the new mage sounds very much like, doesn't it, the new age. The new age is a trap. If I'm not saying there's anything wrong with cleansing your chakras. I'm a trained yoga teacher, but it's another trap. 5D consciousness, it's an outside savior program. Again, something's coming. It's like, no, it's not. We are the 144,000. We are the frequency of the Christ consciousness. Christianity is a Roman tax system. Ananity is an annuity. So Christianity is a fiction. The Christ, or the Christos, that's us. But we have to bring that frequency back in ourselves. Then the whole thing stops, which is again why they're keeping our frequency low all the time, spraying the skies, toxins in our food, and the rest, because they know how powerful we are. And as soon as we wake up to that,
wow,
the Xbox game's over.
So and you know how, I mean, this is clearly a centrally controlled plan, because everybody is in lockstep. Everybody's agreeing to the same thing. Do you have any speculative guess as to where this might be coming from? Because I mean, this is central planning at its finest. I know it's a bit of a deep question, but do you want to point a finger at someone?
I possibly could, and again, this is me postulating. Don't believe me. Go look at this for yourself, and come in Dark Matters, because I put up links all day, every day about stuff if you're interested. And it's coming from something far darker than. Let's look at that pyramid structure of power. We know that we've got government. Govern is governare, to control men's the mind. So mind control. These are all puppets. Davos, sock puppets. Angela Merkel, Theresa May, what's the woman in Europe called? I forget her name now. All related to each other. Wow. All blue bloods. And this bloodline are called blue bloods because they are copper bloods. This is where we get coppers from. That's why they're called policemen, who are the dogs of the elites, or the elven tribes, or the tribe of Dan, or whatever. That's why they're called coppers.
Oh my goodness me! Yeah, no way. I hadn't realised that before. Jeepers.
And it gets worse. So this is why they're called the boys in blue, because it's blue bloods.
Yeah. Oh my God.
This is why when you get arrested, they say you're nicked, because Nick is nickel, which is, and then that's old Saint Nick, which is the devil, and it's linked to the devil's copper.
Wow.
So you're nicked.
Wow.
So they're telling us all the time again, but we just don't know. So take that up another level. People will say it's the Zionist spankers, and this has nothing to do with being Jew or being a Jew. There's nothing wrong with being a Jew. We know these aren't Jews. These are Zionist Jews. These were Canaanites who picked the Jewish religion. They were told to pick one, and they picked being Jewish. Now, being Jewish isn't being a Jew, is it? It's ishy. Jewish. Yeah. What's Jewish? So again, this is this anti, hate language. It's to shut us up, to pointing out at this anti-Semitic, you're an anti-Semite if we say anything about, them committing mass genocide, and that the bankers are kind of running the world. I mean, let's look at the Rothschilds. We know that the Bank of England is a privately owned bank in the majority. People think the Bank of England is something to do with the people, and you'll know more about this than I do, Toshi. But, Rothschild, Roth means red. It means red shield. That's what Rothschild means. And the red shield is the shield of the red dragon, and the red dragon is Satan. So it's all this satanic bloodline and lineage. But again, they get us jumping up and down about Satan, and I love saying I've got satanic Tourette's. If I don't say it at least 3 times a day, I feel unwell. But when really what they're trying to do is keep us from knowing who we are and our true history, which is associating ourselves as the legal fiction, as a piece of paper that we are not. And then actually our land, England, is Great Britain is the Holy Land, and the island was Atlantis, and that it's for us to take back that Christos, or Christ consciousness. And that's the return of the Christ for me. Anything that's anti that is the Antichrist. But this is why you've got King Charles, the Welsh flag, the dog's barking, is a red dragon. And it says in scripture, and the Queen said to him before he was King Charles, "For you shall draw your seat from the power of the dragon." Yeah.
Wow.
So this is where, and if you look at the royal's crest, in scripture it says the Antichrist will have the body of a leopard, the mouth of a lion, and the feet of a bear, or the paws of a bear.
Yeah.
And that's the crest. It's the
Oh
royal
my
crest.
goodness, no way.
That can't be a coincidence, can it? And these are this Dracul, Draco, Anunnaki bloodlines that have been ruling everything since they hijacked this place, thousands and thousands of years ago.
Wow.
In my opinion.
That is amazing. Oh my goodness me, yeah. Yeah, so actually there's I've not spoken about this before, but I may as well tell you one thing that I've actually discovered. I wasn't really going to sort of put this out there on social media, but
It's out there, isn't it?
sort it. Well, let's do it anyway. So, yeah. So I have a friend of mine who's been in on this journey for about 20 years,
Yeah.
and the issue that everybody has is that we, through acquiescence or just ignorance, have consented to their corporate governance because there is no other identification that is that's recognized by anyone, which is stupid. So all we've got is driving license, passport, birth certificate, and it's all the maritime corporate jurisdiction that we are using to identify ourselves, and therefore effectively creating joinder and contracting with them, which in their eyes gives them the authority over us. However, one of my friends literally just discovered this story the other day. Have you ever heard of a sovereign people called the Maroons?
The Maroons, no.
Oh, so check this out. I'll just whiz through this story quickly. So the Maroons were the original Israelites, like the God's people, that were in Cana to start with, the land of Cana, that migrated over to West Africa, Ghana, where at the time the Spanish were sort of plundering everything, and they'd persuaded them to come with them to the West Indies and the Caribbean, where land was plentiful and all this kind of stuff, and so they'd taken tribal leaders and African kings with them, and when they got there, they found themselves enslaved by the Spanish on their plantations. Then what happened in 1655? The British, who were at war with the Spanish, then started plundering all the islands that the Spanish had initially claimed for themselves. And so when the Spanish did a runner, they let the slaves loose, as it were, and then the British went to enslave the people who were initially the Spanish slaves, and they put up a massive fight, literally from 1655 right the way to 1739, and they did so much damage. They actually introduced guerrilla warfare to the British, because at the time the British were referred to as redcoats, because they'd line up and they'd walk in a line and they would do what they were told, and it was all very organised, and yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full sir, and this lot were just like, we're having none of this. We are literally fighting for our lives because we know what your game is, and they literally beat the British in so many battles that they were wiping out entire armies of soldiers. Like I think there was one famous battle where 400 British redcoats were died and not a single loss to the Maroons, because they were using guerrilla tactics in the Blue Mountains of Jamaica to defend themselves. And so you have to bear in mind that the Cest du KV Act came into force in 1666. So by 1739, everybody in England and Britain was already in their corporate maritime jurisdiction. So eventually, when the British effectively almost not really surrendered, but said, look, we give up, we're not going to fight you anymore, they came to a peace treaty with these Maroons in 1739, which granted each individual member of their government and recognised their government as sovereign, and every single individual within that government sovereignty. So this means that just simply, if you are a member of the Maroon government, you straight away come out of the UK corporate maritime jurisdiction. So all you need, and the Maroon government is, like I said, it's a sovereign government. They have no specific land anywhere. So all it is if you present yourself using your Maroon government identification, you are immediately sovereign, which means they cannot contract with you. They cannot create joinder.
Yeah, yeah,
it's a really simple way out of all of their
yeah,
corporate BS that they're trying to
yeah.
put us in. And what's unique about the Maroon government is that they're recognised as sovereign rather than an indigenous people. So you might have an indigenous tribe which is recognised as an indigenous tribe, but they're still
Yeah,
not recognised as sovereign. Whereas the
yeah,
Maroons are. So literally
yeah.
get an identification from the Maroons. They cannot contract with you. They can't join with you. So that actually gives you sovereignty. And what's important is that the codes that you're given on your identification are recognised by the United Nations and the Universal Postal Union. That's the most important thing. Yeah.
Interesting.
So you
I was
might
gonna, yeah, I was gonna say that's the interesting bit at the end because sovereignty is in the mind. There's no piece of paper that can really give it you, in that sense. Because even the law is a Roman construct, but that bit at the end with the UPU, because that's what the Vatican is. It's just the postmasters of old, really,
yeah.
the money lenders of old, basically. So if it's recognised by the United Nations and the UPU, then that is very interesting.
Yeah, I mean this is the first time I'm actually telling people about it while
Yeah.
you're on here, because you can have an identification
Exclusive.
that yeah, absolutely, you can have an ID that says look, I am sovereign, but the fact is that and
You
that
don't.
ID might stand above all other corporate IDs, but the fact is it's not recognized. It hasn't got
Yeah,
the
yeah, that's the
recognition, so
key.
so
Yeah,
they'll so
yeah,
they'll just ignore it.
yeah, yeah,
Whereas
exactly. Yeah.
this ID actually being a member of the Maroon government means that you are now recognized as sovereign by the United Nations and UPU. That's what's so
Yeah.
significant about it. So now we actually have a way to be identified and recognized as sovereign, and
Mhm.
obviously we've got BSV as a commoditized money. Yeah, so
I'm
it
I'm
literally could be
feeling
a
this.
solution.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Wow. That's yeah. I'd like to know more. Yeah, well, that was very succinctly put. I totally get it. But yeah, I'd totally like to know more about that. Yeah, get me involved in that. Get me toes in those waters,
Fantastic.
Toshi. That sounds awesome.
That's
We
what I
can
was
get things
looking
like
for.
that out. Wow.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and it's kind of like whereas at the moment, obviously, people are kind of
Yeah.
like learning common law, and they're trying to make sure that they don't get into joinder by using words like driving and vehicle and blah 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 blah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas this is a really simple solution. You literally just wave your ID at them. That is it. Because and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
or if a problem ever did arose, we've obviously got numbers who you can ring, and we know that once they're recorded, and again, nothing's registered in the Maroons, it's all recorded because everybody, all the members are sovereign
Yeah.
individuals, and that also means that if you, as a sovereign individual, wanted to set up your own government, you could also do that.
Yeah.
There's not a problem because it's not a registration process. It's purely a record of the fact that you are now recognised by the UN and the UPU as a sovereign individual, a living man or woman. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, exactly, and that's that difference, and you touched on it beautifully there, between registering something Regis of the King and recording something is lawful. And like I say, sovereign, it generally is, it's here, but the pieces of paper are just that kind of how you move that sovereignty, that distinction between private and public. But like you say, Toshi, the big thing is try telling them that,
Exactly.
because it's fear, force, as it always has been for thousands of years, and bullying tactics. But the court, people don't realize that the court is not the building. That's just a building with actors in it. Your court as sovereign is always the paperwork. It's always that distinction. So like you say, if they've got that recognized, recognized, with the UPU governs all commerce on the planet, as much as they like to try and deny it.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I say, they are, see postmaster, see banker, Black's law, see judge, see postmaster, see banker. The post offices were the original banks. A lot of people don't know that,
Wow.
and
Yeah,
and
that
that's
doesn't surprise me
yeah,
actually.
and that stamps actually are still backed by silver and gold, so they actually have value, which is why postal mechanics is utilized on legal documents or lawful documents. So
Wow.
with the correct use of grammar, the correct conveyance of grammar,
Mm.
goes back to that Justinian deception I said with the forked tongue. learn the serpent tongue and use it against them. If everything's in boxes, in bolds and capitals and numbers and like the Baron taught me, nothing's ever signed. Well, that's a fraudulent document. It's a legal document that you can give. You give the jurisdiction to that. But a lawful document is always a one-skin document, written in the correct. You're stating what language you're using. And it's grammatically correct. But you can back those documents by utilising postal mechanics, which Andy from The Good knows way more. He's the master of that, and I interviewed him on my channel. So if people are interested in knowing a little bit more about that, he's promised to come on and do a part 2 about that. So it would be interesting to speak to him about that as well. He runs The Good, which is basically setting up his own Goodism. It used to be called the Good Nation, but nation means something else, so he changed it to the Goodism. But again, it's creating your own sovereignty. Because again, he who creates owns. Yes. We created government, we created these allegedly, but we know that that's not true, really. We give up our, as Dolores would say, our inalienable rights for the benefits and privileges of the state, and we're tricked and conned into it from, brainwashed into it from being, very young, and associating ourselves as that bit of paper. Listen to this one for being quite sick that I slightly worked out. As we realise that, the Vatican is worshipping Sirius, which is the, Sirius ABC in the constellation of Canis Major, which is Satan, or this, the Sirius star, which is in battle with, Saint Michael, our son. The good v evil dance, the cosmic dance. Obviously when you go into, you sit down at school, don't you, and they get the register out, the register. And they say, Carly Spell, obviously the surname means no name. It's or surf name. It makes us into a fiction. It turns Carly as a fact into a fiction. And what do we say when we say that we're present? We say yes sir, or yes sir, and sir is Sirius. It's a title.
Wow.
So you're saying yes. So you're saying yes, Satan.
Oh, jeepers.
I worked that one out. People might argue that one with me, but I went, Canaan. What's a nun? The black and white, the duality, how the nun wears the robes. I thought Canaan, Canaanites, Khazaria, Canaans. They're all part of that system. Canaan, Canon, QAnon. I think QAnon. It's Janus, the two-headed figure. The statue of Janus, the face is pointing left and the face is pointing right. They create both sides, and if you're believing one of their systems, whether it's the New Age or Trump's coming to save you, I've got bad news for you. You've just fallen into another box, another trap. They back both sides, as we know. The only true change will come from us. On the ground, like with BSV, like with the Maroons, or something like where we remember who the feck we are, really. That's know thyself, the biggest thing in scripture. And again, if you're not the legal fiction, if hang on a minute, we created government, not the other way around. Our status is higher than yours, and which is why they reduce, lower your status with titles like Sir, Mrs., all this stuff, Doctor, blah, blah, blah. It's all their system, and we go, hang on a minute, no. And we go back to the land, they've took us off the land and planted us in that unholy maritime sea, as I say. And we've got to put the soles of our feet, which is the soul, which gives us standing on the land, of which we have dominion. That's what we've got to kind of get back to.
Wow. That is a really good place to stop, because I've just looking at the time here. It's 58 minutes. Yeah, well, let's I'll just stop the recording here because it's been great, and then we can continue afterwards. So we'll wrap up the show. That's been 50 minutes. So everybody that's been listening to this, I hope you enjoyed it. Obviously, you can contact me and Callie with regard to any information that we've put out in this show. You can also contact me directly and then ask questions, blah, 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 blah. But until then, be aware, take care, stay safe out there, and we'll see you in the next one.